All right. Hey, everybody. It is I, Hope Giselle, and y'all, I know that a lot of y'all have been waiting specifically to hear what I had to say. And so I wanted to come and bring a little one-two to the space and just give y'all my thoughts and opinions. Now, this is about to be, interesting because I do have thoughts and opinions around this, and some of them, I think y'all are gonna agree with. Some of you all, I'm not sure how y'all are gonna feel. You might be cool or come out of the bag on me, and either way it goes. I just want y'all to know I don't really care one way or another. But after we've all sat back over the last couple of weeks and looked at and really interrogated this whole Dominique Morgan situation, what I think all of us are really asking ourselves here is what really happened, right? What really happened with this whole Dominique situation? Everybody and their mom has been talking about it. Everybody wants to know, sort of like what's going on. And Dominique went and she did her 21 days. And now that she's done her 21 days, she's come out. And if you follow Dominique or if you've been following this particular case, then you've seen that Dominique came out and she came out swinging. She came out and got right back into her content creation bag. She came out to a couple of bookings, like essentially sis popped her shit. And I don't think that I don't think I'm gonna have to cut the comments off because y'all are acting up already. But I don't think that as it pertains to her coming out that we should be discussing the way that Dominique decided to pop out. I see a lot of commentary around, oh, she came out, she started making all of these videos, she started doing all of this stuff. And it's just like, I'm a little bit less, right? I'm a little bit less inclined to like care about how she popped out and a little bit more inclined to talk about some of these receipts that were presented or lack thereof receipts that were presented. Now, I watched Gabrielle's video and I want to give like a little bit of of context to both things. So I'm going to play a little bit of Gabrielle's video because I think it was the last one that was made. And I want us to sit in it together. And then I'm going to play a little bit of the first interview with Dominique. And then I'm going to play a little bit of the second interview with Dominique. And I'm doing this because I want people to understand what I know to be true about tone and what I know to be true about environment and intention. Now, this is where I'm going to get in trouble with a couple of people because y'all going to feel like I'm throwing shots. And I guess to certain degrees, maybe I am. But I think that when you are not a journalist, when you don't have journalistic integrity, when you don't understand how to truly conduct interviews, and when you haven't been equipped to really like dig deep on sensitive topics that require nuance, sometimes you can get lost in the sauce of responding to the comments or get lost in the sauce of like wanting to have a sister girl conversation rather than really pulling out the information that's necessary for your audience. Because ultimately what we're doing interviews for and why we do interviews as people who are journalists or pseudo journalists or content creators is to get you, the viewer, the listener, the watcher, what it is that you seek. And I think that ultimately, that's what my goal is going to be here tonight. And that comes without having guests. Gabby ain't here. Dominique ain't here. If they do pop in the comments, if y'all tag them and they would like to come on and join, I'm more than happy to let, everybody speak their piece. But this is just Hope doing what Hope always does. So like I said, I am going to pop into just a little bit of Gabby's interview. And, like we gonna see a little bit of what happened here. So let me move my screens around so I can control things easier. And then we're gonna get into the gist and the jab. Okay. So here we go.
I'll say this, that's not accurate according to the Southern District of New York. Our legal counsel has been kept informed throughout this entire process, and we have been specifically told what restitution will look like going forward. Dominique Morgan pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 5 years of probation with a court-ordered restitution to be paid to the Okra Project. A follow-up hearing is scheduled for August 12th to determine the final restitution amount. On the screen, you will also see an email confirming what I just told you. Now we'll move into part 3, restorative justice and the communication record. Claim number 11, in some of the things that she has said online was that the Okra Project could have just talked to her, or we could have, many people have said that we could have used restorative justice practices. I want to address this carefully because I actually do believe in transformative justice. I'm not dismissing that, but I want to walk you through what actually happened, because the record shows that we did try repeatedly and we got nothing back from Dominique Morgan. On August 3rd, 2022.
All right, y'all. So for those of you all who are on my YouTube, my Facebook, and my Instagram, y'all just watched a clip where Gabrielle basically talked a little bit through the restitution portion of this. Now, we know that Dominique has fervently said, and she stands on the fact that she does not owe restitution. Now, I do have, because Dominique provided it to me, a list, okay, a host of different little things that I'm going to comb through as we have this conversation. But I also wanted to talk to you, or let you all see another portion of this particular conversation, which looks a little something like this, right? Because here's a little bit about what Dominique had to say on the ways that they were able to spend this money, how the money moved, and what the money did and did not do. And so I want to remove this particular little video here so that I can now introduce y'all to one of the interviews that Dominique did that I think is important for us to take a look at. So here we are. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay.
Girls and 50 wigs, bitch, and we were gonna do it by noon, as long as we could get the fiscal agency to finally move the money for us.
Okay. That's Sister Sheko.
I'm sitting here thinking about all this unrestricted funding.
Mm-hmm.
What type of mind, or where was you going to get? How was you moving this money like this without it being fiscally smart? Like, there had to be some oversight. How wasn't it a 501c3? Where you get this money from?
So for me, with love, I'm a bad bitch with this nonprofit shit. Because for me, I love puzzles, and I looked at this system. Also, I want to say I came into the nonprofit system being perceived as male. So I was shown things. I got opportunities to get inside of programs. I got opportunities to sit in rooms with people that I probably wouldn't have had I transitioned when I came into the work. And I saw shit, and I peeped, and I sat back, and I was like, oh, yeah, these white folks hire the kids of their friends straight out of college. So why the fuck does this trans girl have to understand NASDAQ for me to hire her? Cool. All right. We'll figure that out. I want you to get there, but you don't have to be there for me to pull you in. Then I understood working with independently wealthy people. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, the land of Warren Buffett. I've sat across from Susie Buffett, and I've been able to raise millions upon millions of dollars. And
All right, y'all. Okay. So I know that some of you all take interest in the way that Dominique seemingly avoids the things and does not provide the receipts, right? And I want to also name that as it pertains to I think the interview style, well, I think that Crazy Sexy Cool did that the next interview that I'm going to show you with Dominique that T.S. Madison just doesn't do that well is ask really, really direct questions in a way that does not make you feel that, Dominique is the favorable candidate here, which is exactly what I think Dominique was trying to do. The whole premise for why she said that she chose to do this with Crazy Sexy Cool was because it felt like a space that would be neutral for her, because these are not her good Judys. These are not, people that look at her as, sisters or whatever the case may be. These were simply folks that she felt understood and knew the situation enough, were trusted and respected enough in community, and had the reach so that she would be able to come out and tell her story without having people being like, oh, well, Monroe did the interview, so of course she's going to be on your side. Or, oh, the first interview out was Madison, and of course she's going to be on your side. She is in business with you, essentially. And so Dominique, she really chose, right, She really chose to do something that I feel was, I guess, like, the best thing to do is to keep y'all from being able to have things where you can like poke holes before the interview even gets started. And so I know a lot of people were just like, but why did she choose this particular platform? Why didn't she go somewhere else? Why didn't she do all of the things? And I think that Dominique has explained it, but also I think that it's worth mentioning over again that if I continue to go to the people that y'all know I'm friends with, that y'all know that I'm cool with, that y'all know that I kick it with, y'all ain't gonna believe nothing that I have to say because y'all barely believe anything that I have to say when they're not involved. So anything where they are involved, anything where they do come up in conversation or in question, y'all are going to automatically debunk it and say that that's the reason why this interview is, you know, either really, really good or seems to be in favor of me, right? But here's my thing as it pertains to the interview style of what happened on Crazy Sexy Cool. I feel like it is not, you don't lack or you don't lose out on cool points for journalistic integrity just because people know you or they don't know you. I think that the audience understands and recognizes that sometimes the relationship between two people can make the interview that much better because that person knows how not only to ask the questions, but they also know how to pull out certain emotions. They know how to pull out certain feelings and certain things, which is why I beg to differ that the interview between Madison and Dominique was different. I ain't gonna say better. I'm gonna just say different because the relationship there prompted Madison to ask different types of questions and it got a different response from Dominique than the ones that she had been given by other people. Now, I have to, like, I would be remiss if I did not say that, in my opinion, the Crazy Sexy Cool interview was all over the place, right? It felt like Tabitha wanted to do the interview, but didn't want to do the interview because Tabitha wanted to be out of it. Because if you know anything about Tabitha, she is the people's auntie. She wants everybody to be friends. She wants all of us to kumbaya at the end of the day. Like, personally, I just don't know Tabitha to be the type of person that like wants us all to be arguing. And so to me, it felt like Tabitha was on the fence about doing the interview altogether because it just felt like it was going to be a group of people that were, you know, like just hungry for the drama. And I think that Tabitha was doing her best to control the drama while asking what she felt like were the hard-hitting questions. And then I just believe that, you know, and it's no tea, no shade. I don't know Asia. I don't know, you know, a lot about her interview style. And I don't particularly watch Crazy Sexy Cool because I've seen that it's kind of sort of become a ballroom podcast. And I'm not a ballroom girl. I don't be knowing half of the stuff that they're talking about. And so for the most part, I just don't watch the show enough to know Asia's like how she brings it, right? When she brings it. And so she very well could have been bringing the way that she always brings it. But I just think that in this particular instance, it felt like Asia was there for the tea. And if tea was not being spilled, she was tuned out. And that can turn into something that really can be off-putting for the audience, because I know that when folks are doing interviews, people be like, oh, well, you know, they're there for this person. We are there for everybody that's going to be on screen. And if you're going to be on screen, you need to look interested. Your questions should be prepared. And you have to know how you're going to ask these questions in a way that's going to be open-ended so that your guests can go as long or as little as you need them to go and be able to expound beyond a single question answer. And I felt like a large part of the disconnect in the Crazy Sexy Cool interview that wasn't there for the Madison interview is that I really felt like if all three of them couldn't have been there, then none of them should have done it, or only one of them should have done it, right? And again, I really feel like the interview was necessary to not be with people that she knew right out of the gate. But I really just felt like there was something that was off in this complete entire interview. Not to mention, this was the first interview a couple of days out, right? This was the first interview a couple of days out. And I'm going to talk about this when I get into the section of the show where I give you all my thoughts. But this is just my breakdown for real of what we saw happen. And I think that overall, that first interview with the Crazy Sexy Cool crew just wasn't used in a way, or wasn't, it wasn't as impactful as I think that it could have been, just because of those, you know, like I just because of those particular like things, I feel like when it comes down to doing interviews of this magnitude, I do agree. And I know that there are going to be some people that are going to sit back and say things like, oh, well, Hope, like, that's not fair if that's what Dominique wanted to do, or whatever the case may be, or, oh, that feels like a shot that you're saying that they could not conduct an interview, or, you know, that they didn't want to conduct the interview the proper way. But I just also feel like at the end of the day, like, if you don't have the wherewithal to really hold space for, you know, I just feel like if you do not have the space to really hold space for interviews that people are really tuned into, they're really trying to find the facts, they're really trying to find the hard hitting evidence, then sometimes it's best for you to just say no. Sometimes it is best for you to just say no to the opportunity, because you end up making yourselves and other people look and feel and sound a little off. Right. And that's just my opinion about the entire thing. I don't necessarily know if it was necessary to have all of those, you know, all of these interviews, but I definitely think that as it pertains to, you know, what was going on here, I probably wouldn't have jumped out the gate with Crazy Sexy Cool. That's just, you know, like, that just wasn't my thing. Now, let's talk a little bit about what Dominique said. And I want to, like, I really want to lean into the Outlaws podcast for this one, because I personally believe that we got a little bit less of, you know, the attitude and the neck rolling and all of the things, you know, like, I just personally believe that we got a better sense of what Dominique was feeling from the Outlaws podcast that she did with Madison versus the one that she, you know, like I versus the one that she did with Crazy Sexy Cool. And like I said, the reason behind that is likely because when it comes down to it, she has a relationship with Madison where Madison can kind of sort of press and ask questions without Dominique getting or giving what I believe is a defensive response or a defensive, you know, answer or whatever the case may be. And I just feel like when it comes down to it, while her and Madison may get to a key, Madison also is in a space where she's used to interviewing people on a multitude of different topics. And so there's a lot of things that get an opportunity to come up and come to the light there because Madison has a little bit more experience in that particular way. She has a little bit more experience in that particular way. And a lot of the time, I know that people are going to say that it doesn't really matter who you sit down with. If you're telling the truth, then like those things, that shouldn't change, but they do. And the reason why I'm looking for it specifically on the Outlaws podcast is because I really want to be able to show y'all this, but for whatever reason, I can't even find the Outlaws podcast with Dominique and Madison anymore, which is interesting. And I'm doing this in real time. So hold on, because I was able to find every other interview. What's going on? What's going on? Because I found every other interview and now this one is not. Come on, I'm only finding clips. What's happening? What's happening? This is interesting. I can only find clips from, I can't find the actual video. Huh. That's interesting. That is really interesting. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let that go because I can only find clips. I can't find the actual interview with her sitting down with Madison, which is interesting. But what I will say is that Dominique said a lot in these interviews. And one of the things that Dominique was able to say was matter-of-factly that she does not feel like she owes anybody an apology because she didn't do shit. And so when you say that I don't owe nobody an apology because I didn't do shit, that to me says a lot about the way that you feel about the public court of opinion, because you know that people are looking for the answer around whether or not you did this. You know that the people are looking for this sense of accountability. You know that people want to lean into your thoughts about your behavior. But the problem is with this is that if you don't believe that you've done anything wrong, or if you don't believe that your behavior in this instance was wrong, then of course you have nothing that you feel like you need to apologize for. One of the things that stuck out to me that I really want to make clear for everybody is that, in my opinion, what it seems like Dominique was saying is that this money was not stolen. It seems like what Dominique is trying to say is that this money was reallocated, right? And it seems like this money was reallocated in the form of when they traveled, when they did all of this extra stuff. You know, like it was one of those things where it was just like, oh, I used it for this random Uber over here. This girl did not have a bank account over there. This person might have needed this random thing when we were on a trip. And so Dominique was footing the bills for all of these things and then getting the money on the back end. But also what Dominique said, and I think that it's important to note, is that they weren't just paying her as a reimbursement. They were paying her as a reimbursement with her already procured salary and paycheck. Now, I did watch Gabrielle's video, and when I tell you, Gabby had, I think it was about 12 different points that she wanted to address, which means that she pretty much had watched the same videos that you and I watched. All of us sat back and watched it. And I think that Gabby sat back and watched all of those videos as well. And she came up with these different 12 things that she wanted to address, I believe. And none of those things that she wanted to address concerned what Dominique mentioned as it pertains to the idea of these things were not things that Dominique just took and spent into thin air, but it was actually things that she spent while they were working and doing work for the Okra project. And it was mighty strange to me that in all of the receipts that Gabby presented, because she presented several receipts that even made me go, right? When she presented those receipts, she never actually said anything about what Dominique had said about where that money was spent, why it was spent a certain way, and why there might not have been receipts, for it. And that to me is a red flag. Not because not because Gabby just didn't address it, but to me, I feel like if that's the thing that can incriminate Dominique the most, if that's the thing that can really like sail her up a river, why would you not start there? Why would you not start there and say and debunk that Dominique, spent all of this money? Why would you not debunk the fact that Dominique said that y'all didn't have bank accounts? Because nowhere in Gabby's video, unless I went to sleep on that part, did Gabby like debunk the fact that she didn't have a bank account, or that Alana didn't have a bank account, or that, all of these claims for why Dominique spent that money the way that she spent that money while they were working. None of those things were addressed. And that just kind of makes me go, because she definitely did address a lot of fraudulent documents, right? And fraudulent things that got submitted. But here's the deal. In Gabby's video, she submits that these documents that Dominique submitted were fraudulent. And they had 5 different times where Dominique was supposed to be able to respond and get this community care that I think a lot of us in community and Dominique were asking for. And Gabby presented the receipt that says, we tried to hit her up 5 times, and every single one of those times she left us on red. But the thing about those hit ups were not really community care and justice. And that's what I'm going to say. I think that this is why people always say it's your side, my side, and the truth. Dominique is saying that y'all didn't reach out to do community care. Y'all really didn't give a shit. Like, y'all just kind of wanted her to suffer because at that particular point, I guess it was beef. I guess it was up and it was stuck. And so Dominique really felt like, you know what I'm saying? Dominique really just felt like y'all were really driving it in order to make her look like the villain in the situation. And it's no tea, no shade, Gabby. I really appreciate the fact that you brought those receipts, because I think that oftentimes people will look at people and say things like, oh, well, y'all didn't try. Well, you didn't do your best. You didn't reach out. You didn't say the things. You didn't blah, 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 blah. But I think where both of y'all got each other fucked up is this. I think that both of y'all have each other fucked up because, Gabby, you did not reach out for community care and intervention and for y'all to handle this as women. You reached out to say, hey, bitch, this is what these people are saying. This is what's going on. And if you don't provide us with this money, your ass going to motherfucking jail, because me and Alana is not going to jail for the things that you did. Dominique is saying y'all didn't reach out at all for community care. And where I think Dominique, you got them fucked up, is that they did reach out. The difference is that I think that the language of community care looks like, hey, on a text message, on an email that doesn't have anything to do with the Okra project, on a phone call that you recorded. Where did you reach out to me as another Black trans woman to a Black trans woman and say, hey, this is fucked up. And in order to make this right, in order for us to be good, in order for us to move forward, despite what the state of New York is going to do, despite what these legislators are going to do, despite what the legal teams want to do, here is what we as community need from you in order to feel like this is something that you've atoned for. That ain't really what happened. And also, Dominique, they did reach out, and it you know, at least from what Gabby presented, you didn't respond, right? And so I think that there's a difference in they didn't reach out. And I think that there's also a difference in we reached out, but we reached out with community care in mind, because y'all didn't reach out with community care in mind, which is likely why you didn't get the response that you were looking for from Dominique. But I also think that it's unfair of Dominique to say that they just did not reach out at all, because clearly, according to the receipts, they did. And so again, your side, my side, and the truth. And everything is always going to be up for the interpretation of the person who actually experienced it. And so I think that it's also a little bit unfair people on the outside to be out here trying to tell Gabby like, oh, you know, like that wasn't a reach out, because in her mind that might have been a reach out. And also, if you don't have the acumen, or if y'all are also beefing, or if y'all are also going through it, sometimes you're not thinking about the fact that that came off as impersonal. Sometimes you're not thinking about the fact that that didn't feel like a sister reaching out to a sister. Sometimes you're just like, I reached out and that should have been enough, because low key I didn't want to talk to her anyway. And so the least that I could do was make sure that she got the correspondence that said, girl, if you don't respond with these things, you're gonna be in trouble. And so to Gabby, that was a reach out. To Dominique, that was bullshit. Because if we cool, and if I love you, and if you're this, and you're my daughter, and you're my sister, and you're all of these things, then how dare you think that reaching out to me with some white people on the back end of this email is a reach out for community care and justice? That's not how we do things in community. That's like the idea of me and Dominique getting into a fight, and we say, okay, we're going to scrap it out for 3 rounds, and after this, bitch, I'm done. And then I turn around and I get my ass whooped all 3 rounds, and now I want to call the police. And like, that's just not community care. I can say, oh, I reached out to Dominique to rectify the situation. But if my reach out to Dominique to rectify the situation looked like me showing up at Dominique's house with 6 police officers, yeah, I might have reached out to rectify the situation. But did I really reach out to rectify the situation? Or did I reach out to make sure that this bitch goes to jail? And I think that there's nuance in the way that we have those conversations, because the intention behind why you did a thing is just as important as doing the thing to begin with. And I think that the intention behind the reach out wasn't what Dominique expected, and therefore there was no response to that. And I think that those things have to be named, and they have to be called out. Now, what I also want to name about this situation specifically is that I'm looking at people in Gabrielle's comments that are saying things like, oh, you know, like, Gabby did all of this and she did it with such class, and you know, she didn't do X, Y, and Z, and she presented the receipts and all this and that. I want to name the parallels between what happened here, because I think some of y'all are missing some key details. Both of these ladies, I believe, had done 3 separate interviews to date on this particular topic, right? I believe Gabby did one with my folks over at MPJI Institute. She did another one on Instagram Live that was a little bit less formal with MPJI. And then she did this one by herself, which technically wasn't an interview. It was just more so of a clear the air sort of like live video standalone moment. Dominique did the Crazy Sexy Cool. She also did Madison. And I believe that she did like another like YouTube live impromptu the other day on the YouTubes, right? Both of these ladies have had multitudes of time and several minutes to be able to pull together exactly what they were going to say, what they were thinking, how they were thinking it, what they're going to do. But what I want to name for y'all is that Gabby had extra time because Dominique had to respond. And this whole thing has worked in Gabby's favor as far as pulling together the response this entire time, because If you are the person responding, then you have all of the tools that you need to craft a better response. For those of you all who don't understand what I mean, if I am doing a talent show, right? Let's just say this talent show is impromptu, like back in the day in the 90s when the aunties pull up $50 and they say, hey, y'all come do this dance competition and we're going to see who wins and gets the $50. Now, as a child, I always wanted to go first because I just knew I was going to shut it down. That was going to be my $50. I was going to rock it. It was going to be done. The thing that I know now as an adult is that going first does not always serve you because you never know what someone else is going to pull out. And having your trump card based on the information that you know versus what you suspect to be true is always going to work better for you. And so I personally believe that as it pertains to Gabby and her video being super calm and super put together and all of these points and the talking and the this and the that and the receipts being in chronological order and all of that stuff comes from the fact that Gabby is not the one that's on the internet, fighting for her life every 2 seconds and having to respond to random people that don't know nothing about the situation, having to deal with her family, likely thinking that, she's a thief or some grand larcenist, on top of having to navigate personal relationships with people because that is still difficult. And I want to say that none of that, right? None of those things I believe are any of Gabby's business. It's not her fault that those people are doing that. But I want to say for the audience, for us, for the people that are looking, note the optics because nuance matters. If I go first in the talent show and I bust out my split instead of my jump split cartwheel moment, and then the girl who goes after me saw me bust out my split and she busts out her hitch kick jump split cartwheel moment after me and the crowd goes wild, it's because she had time to prepare, not because I wasn't ready or incapable. And I think that those two things are the things that we are missing in the conversation around decorum as far as Gabby's video is concerned. But I also want to name this other thing for y'all, because both of these girls, in my opinion, because I'm a darker skinned girl, are light skinned women. But when I look at the colorism privilege, and when I also look at the way that people perceive lighter skin, racially ambiguous looking Black girls, I think that that's another thing that y'all are saying. And it's also not to discredit the fact that Gabby did keep her cool, that Gabby did not insult anybody, that Gabby did not raise her voice above a certain octave. But I also think that a lot of that was due to the fact that Gabby was in there talking to herself and was reading her notes from her computer. It's really easy to not rile yourself up when you've already trained yourself on how this is going to go and how it has to go. When you're sitting in front of a computer reading off notes and clicking responses and doing all of the things, when you have time to post a video that has been edited, there might have been things that you said that we missed. But most of the times when Dominique did these videos, she was not the person in control of the editing room. When they do T.S. Madison and that show over there, iHeart, Madison don't even have a control for real over what's edited and all of that stuff. And these are things that I know because these are things that I witnessed and things that I heard from people that are not Madison. When I was filming my episode and I was talking about the editing process, the people that were there that were helping us in the moment weren't even the people that were going to be editing the episode. And so I wanted to be very clear that as far as that goes, Dominique didn't have control over the afters and what it looked like after. And in the moment when you're on a live video, you can't edit what you say. You can't edit your emotion. You can't go back and re-record a moment or a section or whatever the case may be. And I think that a lot of this is really like we're overlooking the fact that I think a lot of y'all are also dipping into respectability politics. Just because Dominique didn't get on there and say, well, I didn't take this money and, I feel like I've been attacked and here is my receipt and I want to address this particular thing right here. And I want to, address this particular thing right there. I'm just going to make sure that y'all understand all of the pinpoints and the blah, 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 doesn't make her guilty. Right? Just because Gabby sat up there and did do those things doesn't make her innocent, and it doesn't absolve her of whatever part that she played in this. But I do want to say that it made it a lot easier for me to digest what she was saying. If Gabby didn't eat nothing else, I feel like Gabby ate the fact that in order for people to hear what I have to say, I have to just be saying the things that I want them to hear. And it was just that simple. Yeah, what I do believe happened was that Gabby decided that she was going to push past all of the white noise. She was going to remove herself from all of the things that she wanted to say and wanted to respond to. Because to be very clear, if you watch that video back, Gabby threw a couple of shots. She jabbed a little bit. It just wasn't as overt and as direct as Dominique's were, but she definitely had feelings and thoughts about some shit, and she definitely wanted to call Dominique Lil Bill a couple of times. She just didn't, and that's the reason why I'm telling y'all that I think that there's a lot of nuance that goes into being live, being on the spot, having to say the thing in real time versus having time to think about it, being in a room by yourself, going back and doing post-editing work and all of those different things. But she wanted to wear Dominique's ass the fuck out. She just chose not to, because also this video was courtesy of the Okra Project. That is her job. So she couldn't get on there and wild out and act up and say the things that she wanted to say. And if you all notice, Dominique has been doing interviews with motherfuckers that don't have ties to nonprofit work. Right. And so that makes it a lot easier to get on there and say what you have to say when it is not tied to your job or tied to somebody else's connection to the work or tied to somebody else's connection to an organization. And I think that that is something that should also be thought about, because even when Gabby sat down with MPJI, which is another organization that is doing this work. I understand the power move there, right? Because yes. And also, bitch, like, be mindful. If you want to go off, that might not be the best thing to do, because if I know anything about my girl Chastity, she's not about the drama and the bullshit either. And so she might have cut that fucking live short in order to save MPJI, because it's about making sure that the people get their money. It's about making sure that the funds are being reallocated correctly, but it's not about the drama. And I'm not going to host the space for you to get on here and read and do all of the things. And I personally think that in all of the interviews, there should have been less space given to the reads and more space given to the facts. I think that over time, we ended up getting interviews specifically from Dominique that really gave us that full throttle, sort of like deep dive on how she felt about things. But I really just believe that it came at a too little too late, especially when you got, Gabby out here being able to finesse the situation in the way that she was by showing up as this respectable, classier, light-skinned girl sitting here unbothered by the things that are going on. And also virtue signaling with the, I really don't even want to make this video bullshit. Yes, you do. Because if you didn't want to make the video, you wouldn't have taken all of the time that you had been taking to do the research to make that video. And that's the one thing that I don't like about situations like this, is that people will hop on and they'll say things like, well, I really just didn't want to entertain this. I really just didn't want to, I really could have been done with this. It's been plaguing my life and da-da-da-da. If you didn't want to make it, you wouldn't have made it. Take it from a bitch who says that. And when I say that, I don't be meaning it for real. Because, bitch, if I didn't want to make the video, I wouldn't have made the video. There's a lot of things that I don't want to make a video about. And guess what? Y'all don't get one. But when I get on there and I say, you know what, y'all, I really didn't want to make this video, it really just means that there are circumstances in that particular moment that I don't want to make that video in. But trust and believe that I want to make the video. It just means that right then and there wasn't the time that I was like expecting myself to want to make this video, but here we are. And I think that people need to own that. I really believe that Gabby needs to own the fact that she wants to read Dominique's eyes out of the back of her head publicly and make her cry. The thing about that is, I don't believe that Gabby is that girl, because I don't think that she can compete where she can't compare in the reading department, which is why she's shying away from it, because she knows that if they get the reading and going back and forth and we take it off of the situation, Dominique wins. If we take it off of the issue at hand, Dominique wins. And again, I believe that is the best. That's the best strategy that Gabby could have taken. Again, I love the fact that Gabby presented all of these receipts and things, but also let's talk about the fact that if you're presenting receipts from ABC, which has been known to really not have good bookkeeping, and the books that y'all were keeping, which you admitted were not the best because Dominique was running them. If Dominique was running these books and they were bad, then why would you use those as receipts to show us that you're right? If the books that Dominique was handling were not good books, then why are those books the same books that you're using in receipts? And so again, I feel like your side, my side, the truth is somewhere in the middle of that, because make it make sense. So now that we've gotten through a little bit about what Dominique said, let's really think about what Okra said, because I do want to get back into some of what Gabrielle was saying, because I also want y'all to see the way that she strategically pulls up these receipts and what exactly these receipts are doing. Now, you can use your phone to kind of sort of do the pause and stop. But if there's anything that I know as a person who understands content creation and people's attention, is that most people are not going to read the receipt that you put up unless those people are just messy and want to continue to validate what you are saying. A lot of people are just going to take it at face value. And one of the things that I wish that Gabby would have done is give us time to read these receipts. Because a lot of these receipts were going super, super fast. You couldn't really see them for a long period of time. And also, I just feel like I didn't really know what I was looking at. That's a part of the reason why I have an entire file and folder of receipts and things from Dominique. But I'm not going to sit here with y'all and sift through all of this information, because a lot of this stuff, one, is sensitive, and two, a lot of this stuff don't make sense if you weren't there. You know, a lot of these things that both Dominique and Gabby are presenting are things that, unless you are a part of the board, unless you were a part of the treasury, like if you were not there, if you were not a part of the proceedings and all of that stuff, none of those things actually make sense. And I think that both of these women are banking on us not knowing what the fuck we're reading, but just being happy that somebody's like, boom, a receipt, right? And I think that if I were really more invested in this story, what I would do if I was more invested and I had more time is to sit back and go through some of these receipts bar for bar, word for word, and see just how many of these receipts match up with one another. Because I don't think that Dominique is avoiding the fact that there was communication had. I just think that she's stating that the reason that she didn't respond was because of X, Y, and Z. And I don't think that Gabby is bold-facedly like really saying a lot either. Because what I did notice in Gabby's video, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but if y'all go back, I don't think, at least in Gabby's last video, maybe I missed the other one, but in Gabby's last video, I don't remember Gabby like directly saying that Dominique stole the money either. I remember her saying how it affects community. I remember her saying that it wasn't right. I remember her saying that she took, you know, food out of the mouths of community and that part was fucked up. But I don't remember Gabby like directly just being like, this bitch stole the money. And language be mattering. You know what I'm saying? Like language be mattering, because I just also feel like if somebody stole that money, I'm going to forever be saying very directly, she stole this money. She stole this money. Dominique is a thief who stole this money. And I feel like while Gabby said a lot of things about Dominique, she never said, oh, Dominique took this money. She talked about the court proceedings. She talked about where they had a hand in it, where they didn't have a hand in it, who called who didn't call who. She addressed the rumors around her boob job. She addressed the rumors around Alana being fired, but she never once really straight up said, oh, Dominique stole this money. And that's interesting to me, because I feel like when asked, Dominique never really said, I didn't steal this money. And so to me, and here's what my favorite part of the show is going to be, is this. What does Hope think happened, right? So we've gotten 6 or 7 different videos that we can all piece together what's going on for ourselves and think through, you know, how everybody is feeling about this and what Dominique said versus what the Okra Project said and all of these things. But what I want to talk about is what nobody said. People were asked the question about whether or not Dominique stole this money, and I don't remember seeing anybody being able to directly answer that question on both sides. And so if you ask me, I love Dominique. I don't know Gabby like that, but I have no reason to dislike her. And I like the work that the Okra Project does, regardless of what I think that we need our trans. I think that we need all of our trans organizations and EDs and all of those things to persist. So I'm never going to go against an organization unless that organization in and of itself is bad for community, which I don't think that Okra Project is. So I have no stake in the game to feel a type of way about Gabby. I think I've met her like maybe once or twice. And I think in both of those instances, she was nice. It was friendly. I've supported the Okra Project even through all of this stuff that's going on, because again, the organization is bigger than the beef. And so there's that. But what I do think is important to name about this is that if y'all are asking me up front, do you think that Dominique took this money? I believe Dominique used this money for the wrong things. I think that Dominique used this money in order to try to make sure that people had what they needed on these trips. I think that she used this money to make sure that the people had housing and the best meals while they were working. She used the money to make sure that the girls was able to get their things and move their things and do all of the stuff. And in the midst of her doing the things to make sure everybody could eat and make sure everybody could to do their vibes and their ones and their twos and their bops. When the kitchen got too hot, bitches flipped. That's what I think happened. I feel like Dominique was trying to help everybody in that office eat. I feel like Dominique was in that office trying to make sure that all the girls got a piece of their coin. I feel like Dominique was in that office trying to make sure she fed the people because she knew that she was going to be in and out. Because again, if you listen to what Dominique said, the plan was 5 years. If you listen to what Dominique said, the plan was 5 years. And if you've ever had a long enough conversation with Dominique Morgan, what you know is that the bitch got the gift of gab, but she also understands longevity. She was not going to stay at the Okra Project longer than 5 years because I think, one, outside of the stress of having to navigate both of those jobs, she also knew that there was only so long that she could be the sole person helping everybody get what they needed. Because what nobody denied was that Dominique made sure that y'all ate. She also made sure that y'all were gifted well. She also made sure that the quality of life that y'all were living changed. And she made sure that y'all were taken care of both on and off the clock. And while I feel like a lot of people are trying to make it seem like, oh, Dominique just up and stole this money and went and put all of this money into this closet, what I think that y'all are missing is that Dominique told y'all what she did with the money. And what she did with the money was wrong. Dominique was dead ass wrong. She should have never made sure that those girls had money to travel. If you don't have a bank account, you won't go. She should have never made sure that those girls were eating the way that she was used to eating, because you were the executive director. The places that you're used to eating at, the things that you like to do, the places that you want to go, they couldn't afford. You shouldn't have paid for them. Dominique was making sure that these girls were safe in and out of their professional life, and she was being a mom to people who were essentially employees to her. If they are not your family, and if they weren't your family coming into this particular situation, and yes, I understand that you might have known Gabby, but you didn't know her like that. You should have left her where she was and treated this like it was a workplace, because that is what they're treating you like right now in this particular situation. And so I do believe that Dominique misappropriated the money, but I believe that she's been 110% clear about how and why she misappropriated this money. And I also believe that even though she's saying it like, oh, I did it for the right things, that it doesn't make it right. As executive directors, as a person who has been an executive director, as a person who has had to manage a certain amount of money, what I do understand is that there are certain things that you just can't do. It doesn't matter how good it might feel for you to do it. It doesn't matter how cool you might think you are with a bitch. But one thing that my mama has always taught me, when you're doing something that you have no business doing, never include nobody else, because you ain't gonna snitch on yourself. And personally, I believe Gabby and Alana and all of the young ladies that were there benefited from what Dominique was doing, even though I think that it was a Robin Hood situation, the way that, Crazy Sexy Cool was trying to frame it. I do believe that was more of a Robin Hood situation. But the problem here was that the bitches that you were giving that money back to turned around and gave the riches back to the king and had you locked the fuck up. And that to me is that bullshit, because I believe, and if you watch Gabby's video, what Gabby also said was that me and Alana were not going to go to jail for some shit that we didn't do, but y'all benefited off of it. But you benefited off of it. Me and Alana weren't going to go to jail for something that we didn't do. Cool. But you benefited off of it. And the second that it no longer was going to benefit you, or the second that the room and the kitchen got a little bit too hot, now all of a sudden everybody wants to leave Dominique high and dry and say that she's Catwoman and Selena Kyle has run off with all the diamonds. But where was all of this energy when it was happening actively? Where was all of this energy when y'all were on the trips and she was swiping the company card or swiping her card and saying that she was going to put it on Okra? Where was all of this energy after the first invoice came back and that invoice was higher than y'all was actually really ready to actually to deal with? Where was all of this energy after the first quarter not Republicans, Lord Jesus, after the first quarter why do I keep saying Republicans? After the first quarter reporting came in, where was all of this energy when she had spent all of this money? Because another receipt that Gabby presented was the fact that she debunked that this $3.8 million went missing underneath her. She insists, and her receipts definitely say that this money went missing under Dominique's tutelage. Okay, heard and understood. So what Gabby essentially says is that Dominique ended up spending, I think, about $2.5 million or something to that effect. And that was during, like, I believe, like her first year at Okra, or during her tutelage completely at Okra. The thing about that is Dominique spent $2.5 million by herself. There's another $1 million or so that was accounted for by somebody else. And then Gabby insists that she brought her spending down once she became the ED to about $495,000. The reason why I'm calling bullshit and I'm calling it in around the idea that, oh, this money just, came up missing and Dominique had just been fraudulent this whole time and Gabby and Alana didn't know nothing about it, is that how do you spend $2 million at an organization wrongfully and nobody calls you out when there are 4 quarters and you have to report during all of them? At the end of the year, even if she had made it through, at the end of the year, when y'all decided that y'all were finally going to bring her in, y'all should have had enough evidence to make sure that there was not even a need for a conversation. Y'all gave her all of this room to play in y'all face when y'all supposedly had already known what she did, but why? And the reason why is because I believe that both Gabby and Alana were benefiting from it, even though they weren't directly touching those things. And so therefore they thought it was safe. They thought it was safe to be able to throw Dominique under the bus because they thought that Dominique was going to be quiet about it. They didn't think that she was going to take her 21 days like a G. They didn't think that she was going to be able to ever really speak about the situation. And they thought that she was going to lean on the idea that most people would not look into this and listen to what everybody was saying to put together something. And I really believe that this is some hood shit that we need to handle like a hood situation. And I know that a lot of you all don't understand what that means because a lot of y'all pretend to be from the hood, but I'm actually from the hood, right? And as a bitch that grew up in Miami and understands the scamming ass niggas, that was my life, right? That's not just a song for me. I understand how money changes hands and how people make shit look funny when things get strange. And what I believe happened at the end of the day is that Dominique was out here making money moves and letting y'all know what was happening so that y'all could be the lookout, and y'all were being the lookouts until y'all realized that being the lookout could have serious consequences. I do believe that Gabby and Alana were in on it. Whatever it was, y'all were in on it. And instead of y'all just saying, hey, we got afraid once it got to a certain point because at the end of the day, we didn't want to go to jail. Y'all are framing it up like Dominique never did anything good for the organization. Like Dominique is this horrible person. Like she's a bitch that can't be trusted. Like she's a person that just steals from community. When I think the other thing that we have to name and the other thing that we have to know to be true is that Dominique is not somebody that's harmed community in a way that I believe that she can't come back from. In fact, Dominique has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to other girls in community to make sure that their organizations can thrive. Dominique has been able to work with Borealis, even though she got fired because of all of this bullshit, and turn that money into other things like the Flower Crown Project. Now, I know some people did not get their money, but also when a bitch gets fired because they think that you are a grand larcenist, I think it might be a little difficult to hold up my end of the bargain as well. And as we all know, as it pertains to these cis people, they only care as long as there's going to be somebody there to hold them accountable. So for all the people who, you know, didn't get the promises, because Gabrielle talked about some of the things that they could not do after Dominique was let go from the Okra project and all of these different things. And I think that we all know about the situation that's going on with, you know, Dominique and, you know, other members of the Flower Crown project, because I'm not sure that it's just Ciora, so I don't want to just call out Ciora, because I think that there might have been other people as well. But I do know that Ciora has been public about it. I think that the one thing that we have to do is give grace. When a person gets arrested, or when a person goes down for something that's that big, even if they were planning to make some stuff shake, everything has to stop, because now they have to figure out where this money is going, where this money is coming from, where is it going to, is it fraudulent, is your organization real? All of these different things come into play once a person gets arrested for something that is this serious. And I believe that Dominique got arrested for something that was huge and serious. And so anything that she was moving, all of the money that she might have been thinking about giving to people and community, got stopped. And I want to flag that Gabrielle even said that, right? Gabrielle said that there were things that they were trying to do that Dominique had put into place, but because of this incident, all of those things got stopped because of what was going on with the case and everything that people were trying to find out about Dominique and the way that she was spending this money. And so essentially what happened was that anything that Dominique was touching got stopped unless it was already in motion. And the only thing that Gabrielle said was in motion that actually got paid out was the Maryland safe haven, or the DC safe haven out there in the DMV. And that was because it had already been under processing before Dominique ended up in this whole situation. So the money was able to be processed through because it was already, I'm assuming, halfway done, or, you know, a couple of days away from hitting the account of that organization. And that was just it. I think that a lot of people, you know, forget the fact that even if you weren't a recipient of that grace, it's not to say that Dominique isn't out here doing her thing on the end of, or wasn't out here doing her thing on the end of making sure that people had the money that they needed to do the things that they needed to do. You cannot like the lady, but at the end of the day, the T.S. Madison Starter House was an amazing idea. You cannot like the lady, but at the end of the day, she still moves hundreds of thousands of dollars to the LGBT and trans community. You cannot like the ladies, but at the end of the day, she still prioritized Black trans people overall in a space where none of us really get prioritized. And if they have to give the money to somebody, they're going to give it to somebody who's racially ambiguous before they ever give it to a Black trans woman a day in their life. And Dominique did those things. Outside of that, I think that the global visibility that Dominique has been giving us as far as it pertains to being somebody who can be trans and that not be the vein of her entire existence online, that's important. But I think on the other side, we have to be very mindful about the Okra Project and what the Okra Project is doing and what the Okra Project can do for community in the event that they're able to claw themselves out of this particular BS and really sustain the mission of the Okra Project. If we're trying to talk about bailing people out, I think that that work is important and it's necessary. If we're talking about reform, I think that that work is important and it's necessary. If we're talking about housing, I think that that work is important and necessary. And if Gabrielle is the person that's over that work, then I think that Gabrielle deserves to be able to sit back and do that work unbothered by all of the stuff that's going on. I don't think that we should be out here flooding anybody's DMs and talking about who's right and who's wrong and who gave the receipt to this and who gave the receipt to that and all those things. Because at the end of the day, both of these women have work to do. Gabrielle has an entire fucking organization that while all of y'all are online talking shit about what and clapping her up for being able to present the receipts, none of y'all donated to the Okra Project today, did you? While everybody's clapping up Gabrielle for giving the receipts, Gabrielle has also been actively campaigning because the Okra Project is about to go under. And I want to know how many of y'all that are out here upset with Dominique and clapping up for the fact that Gabrielle presented receipts and all of these different things. I want to know how many of y'all actually actively made sure that y'all could give so that that girl could keep her job. Because at the end of the day, what I do know and what I do think I understand to be true is that Gabrielle still has work to do in this community, and she's had to be tied up in all of this foolishness in order to even try to get this work done while actively trying to save the organization that I think community members, especially those that are local to the organization, need. And instead of us going out of our way to make sure that that organization can stay open, we're out here trying to, you know, see who wins the battle in the war between Dominique and the Okra Project. Because I want to be very clear, this is not a war or a versus between Dominique Morgan and Gabby. This is about Dominique and the Okra Project. Both of these entities have to survive because both of these entities have been pushed into a system that says neither one of them are worth the time, the space, or the air that they breathe. And so I need y'all to stop acting like this is just two sisters or two girls going at it, when we need to be thinking about the fact that this is about saving an organization and making sure a Black trans woman doesn't end up in the carceral system for $100,000 that I genuinely believe that she spent back on community. Was it the most ethical way to spend that money? No. But do I believe that Dominique took that money and bought a closet and a BMW and all of these different things just to set herself up right? No. But also, I could be dead ass wrong. Dominique could be sitting over there with the truth that she stole this $100,000 and she did build that closet and she did buy that BMW and she bought a couple of bags in the meantime and did all of these other things in the meantime as well. But guess who got to sit with that truth for the rest of their life? Dominique, not me. But based off of what I've heard, I think that somewhere in the middle of all of this are two women who really love each other, who are afraid to apologize to one another for a scheme that went bad. And I don't even want to call it a scheme. I think that this was a stunt that y'all were pulling until y'all couldn't pull the stunt no more. And Dominique was the only real bitch that was willing to do the time for that fucking stunt. And if I were her, I would be upset with you, Gabby, because at the end of the day, when I thought I was going to at the very least have a ride or die at the end of this, you turned on me. And then on the opposite end, Dominique, I think that there's space and there's room for you to acknowledge that Gabby is young and Gabby is green and Gabby is in a space where all she heard was police. And sis switched up. And that's just what happens. If you've ever been in a street situation, or if you've ever been in a hood bitch situation, that is what happens. The person who was newest to the situation, the person who was the most green to the situation, is always going to be the person that gets y'all cased up when the police pull up. And that's just what it is. And I think that in the midst of all of the things that are going on, I don't believe that Dominique is really giving Gabby the grace of understanding where she might have been in that particular moment of her life, because that can be scary. If you've never had somebody say that they was going to do, a certain level of the law on you, and you have these people coming to you and telling you that this is what might happen if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I can understand why somebody might fold. And so I think that these two women need to sit down and have a conversation. It don't have to be public. I just believe that both of y'all need to sit down and have a conversation, because Gabby is saying that Dominique, you never reached out. Dominique is saying, Gabby, you never reached out. And so at this point, what I want is for us to stop having these arguments back and forth between this post and this interview and that interview and this set of receipts and that set of receipts, because ultimately, at the end of the day, Dominique served the time. Dominique served the time. To be very clear, Dominique served the time. Whether y'all like it or not, I don't know what else y'all expect. She did it. She did her 21 days. She has her 5 years of probation. And a lot of y'all couldn't do 5 days in a Chuck E. Cheese, let alone 30 days in Rikers. And so if we're talking about accountability, I think sis is atoned. If we're talking about accountability for real, which I know we're not, sis has atoned. I don't know what else y'all could possibly want from this lady after she spent 30 days in one of the worst fucking systems that we have, a place that people in New York are actively trying to get torn down because it is so bad. And to know that you were going to have to be in there for 30 fucking days and do that shit with your motherfucking chin up is wild. And so if we are talking about accountability, which I know we're not, I think it's been served. If we are talking about accountability, ladies and gentlemen, and all of my siblings and family, I think the accountability has been made. What I want to advocate for now is for a reconciliation of relationship between these two women that clearly love each other and don't know how to have conversation, because at the end of the day, whatever y'all two agreed on in private became a public matter. And now everybody has their hands on a relationship that nobody had their hands on to begin with. And I think it's time for y'all to come back into y'all siblingship. I think it's time for y'all to come back into y'all mother, sister, daughterhood. I think that it's time for y'all to come back into space with one another and have whatever conversation that the both of you all need to have in private or in public, invite us in or keep us out. But at the end of the day, what we can't do is lose powerhouse members of our community for the sake of all of this stuff that's happened. Now, I can understand, Dominique, you done been to jail for this shit. And I don't know about y'all, but I might be a little bit salty for quite some time if I had to go to jail for this shit. Okay? But at the end of the day, I think at the very least, Gabby, you owe Dominique an apology, because regardless of what you could or you couldn't control, you owe that girl an apology, because at no point did you ever really stand up for your friend and talk about all of the ways in which she leveled you up until she made it her business to talk about her love for you and her care for you and her admiration for you. Yes, she read you down, but after being in fucking jail, I'ma read every bitch and their mama too. But what I also heard was that she loves you. What I also heard was the hurt in her voice. What I also heard was the crack in her tone when she had to say, fuck that bitch. Like, what I need y'all to understand is the nuance of this situation and the fact that this is no longer about this money for them. This is about the fact that one person feels betrayed and the other person feels ashamed that they had to do it. And nobody is talking about that. Nobody is talking about the fact that at the end of the day, I did what I was supposed to do. I protected you because I said that I would. And you did not show up for me, even in the smallest, most minute way, when you had every opportunity to, and you let the world dogpile on me, bitch, and you know better. Now, again, I am on the outside looking in. I don't have a personal relationship to know what they were like. I wasn't a fly on the wall while all of this stuff happened. I wasn't there for any of the arguments. I wasn't there for any of the joy. I wasn't there for any of the love. But what I can see is that there are two women who are tired of going at each other, but feel like they have to continue to keep up the facade as long as y'all and us and me and we are watching. I'm not saying that I have to be the final voice in this conversation. It's not my conflict, and I'm just little old Hope Giselle. But what I am saying is that it's time for us to turn the TV off on this. Not because I want us to walk away from this situation feeling like Dominique don't owe nobody the truth about whether she took that money in a very direct fashion or not. But it is to say that y'all can't keep leaning on the idea that it's about her taking accountability when she's already been to jail. Y'all can't keep leaning on the fact that it's about her taking accountability when she's still on probation. Y'all can't keep leaning on the fact that it's about her not, just being real about the situation, and that it's about her being able to understand the harm that she caused Black trans women when she's already done her 30 and is still in it for 5. That's what we can't do. Because if it's really about justice, then you've got it. What else do you want? What I think you all want is a confession that you're not going to get. Y'all want a confession that y'all are not going to get. And the reason that y'all are not going to get is because it is not a confession that can come easy, because it is a confession of nuance. It is a confession that will require Dominique to explain why she did what she did, when she did what she did, the reasoning behind what she did. And I beg to believe that a large part of the reason why Dominique was even willing to stick her neck out on it was because of the love that she had for Gabrielle. And it's just that simple. And I think that Gabby knows that, which is another reason why she's keeping her nose to the ground on this. The money gone. Whether Dominique took it for the right reasons, the wrong reasons, or whatever reasons, the money is gone. Now, what y'all gonna do? We can either sit back and continue to talk shit, or we can prop up the Okra project so that they can continue to do their work by donating, so that they can keep their doors open, so that Gabby can keep her fucking job. We can support Dominique or not support Dominique. But at the end of the day, all of this wild back and forth so that you can get your clip on the internet, gotta stop. That's my 2 cents. That's it and that's all. Save the rest of that shit for your baby mama. And if you decide to make a video about me and you know I don't like you, bitch, just know you're talking about me while I was talking about the situation. And I'll leave it at that. Bye, everybody. And I'll see y'all next time.